This is wine. And somewhere in America right now, someone could be holding a tiny silver dime worth more than an entire mansion, without even knowing it. Today, we're diving into the first 5 Liberty Mercury dimes from your collection. And some of these coins have stories so rare that collectors would fight over them. The 1916 S version from the San Francisco Mint had an extremely low mintage compared to later Mercury dimes. Serious collectors consider it one of the key rarities of the entire Mercury dime series, known for its scarcity and higher grades and strong demand among silver coin collectors. High-grade examples have sold for tens of thousands of dollars, and in exceptional condition, prices can climb even higher as collectors compete for surviving pieces. Every year, fewer pristine examples remain in circulation or collections as time and handling continue to reduce the number of well-preserved coins. If one day only a small number of untouched coins survive in elite condition while global demand keeps growing, experts believe prices could potentially reach extreme levels because rarity is the biggest force in the collector market.
Now let's move to the 1918 Mercury dime. This coin existed during one of the hardest moments in American history. World War I was reaching its brutal final stage, families were sacrificing everything, and silver coins like these passed through factories, military camps, train stations, and local stores thousands of times. Most 1918 dimes saw heavy circulation, which means finding one today with sharp details is surprisingly difficult. Every scratch tells the story of a nation at war. Many collectors love this coin because it represents survival, endurance, and a country pushing through uncertainty. But the real treasure hunters search for rare mint mark combinations and era varieties from 1918. Some examples have unusual striking characteristics that make them highly desirable. Coins with strong full bands on the reverse are especially valuable because the strike had to be nearly perfect. That tiny detail can change a coin from being worth a few dollars to potentially tens of thousands. Imagine someone spending this dime on bread in 1918 without realizing future collectors might one day treat it like buried treasure. And think about this. As time destroys more coins every decade through damage, loss, and private collections locking them away forever, the surviving perfect examples become even rarer. If the number of elite condition 1918 dimes keeps shrinking while collector demand explodes online globally, some experts believe future auction records could become unbelievable. What year Mercury dime do you own?
Next comes the 1919 Mercury dime. The 1919 Mercury dime carries one of the most fascinating historical backgrounds in the entire series because America was recovering from both World War I and the deadly Spanish flu pandemic. The economy was unstable, soldiers were returning home, and people used these silver dimes constantly for food, transportation, and daily necessities. Very few people cared about saving perfect coins back then. They were simply money. That's why finding a well-preserved 1919 Mercury dime today feels like opening a time capsule from one of the toughest eras in modern history. Collectors especially hunt high-grade 1919S and 1919D examples because many were weakly struck or heavily circulated. Coins showing strong details in Liberty's hair and clear bands on the reverse are considered premium pieces. Auction prices for exceptional examples have shocked newer collectors because condition changes everything. A worn coin might be worth little, but a nearly flawless survivor can become a centerpiece in an elite collection. Now, imagine the future.
Now let's talk about the 1920 Mercury dime. The 1920s were beginning. Jazz music was rising, cities were booming, and America was transforming into a completely different nation. The 1920 Mercury dime became part of everyday life during the start of the Roaring '20s. These coins moved through theaters, restaurants, train stations, and growing industrial cities. Most people spent them without a second thought. Because of that, many surviving examples today are heavily worn. But collectors search for something very specific on this date: full bands details on the fasces located on the reverse side of the coin. Those tiny horizontal bands tell collectors whether the coin was struck sharply at the mint. A strong full bands example can be dramatically more valuable than an average coin. Some have sold for astonishing prices because truly sharp examples are extremely hard to locate after more than a century. This is why experienced collectors examine mercury dimes carefully under magnification. The historical importance also adds value. The 1920 mercury dime represents the beginning of a legendary decade in American culture. Coins connected to major historical periods often gain stronger collector interest over time because they feel connected to real stories, not just metal. And here's the scary part. As younger generations begin entering coin collecting through social media and online auctions, demand for iconic silver coins keeps growing globally. If supply keeps shrinking while demand multiplies, some rare 1920 examples could eventually become untouchable treasures worth extraordinary amounts.
Now, the 1927 mercury dime. At first glance, the 1927 mercury dime looks ordinary. That's exactly why many people ignored it for decades. But experienced collectors know something important about this date. Finding one in exceptional condition is surprisingly difficult. Many 1927 dimes entered intense circulation during the late 1920s, and most surviving examples today show major wear. Sharp details are rare, especially coins with beautiful luster and strong full bands. Because so many were used daily, untouched examples slowly disappeared year after year. What makes this coin fascinating is how underestimated it was for such a long time. While collectors chased more famous dates, high-grade 1927 mercury dimes quietly became harder to locate. Today, serious collectors compete aggressively whenever pristine examples appear at auctions. Some have sold for massive prices simply because very few survived with original surfaces and excellent surface quality. And imagine what could happen decades from now. If the number of surviving elite condition 1927 mercury dimes falls dramatically while collectors worldwide continue entering the market, prices could reach levels people today would never believe possible. That's how collectibles evolve from ordinary objects into historical treasures. Which of these coins do you actually have? And which date are you most curious about? And now, we continue deeper into the world of legendary Liberty mercury dimes, because the final 5 coins in this collection may be even more fascinating than the first ones.
Next up, the 1929 mercury dime. This coin was born during one of the most dramatic moments in American history. The year 1929 is remembered for the beginning of the Great Depression, after the stock market crash changed millions of lives forever. Imagine this tiny silver dime passing through the hands of struggling families, factory workers, shop owners, and ordinary Americans trying to survive uncertain times. Very few people cared about preserving coins back then because survival mattered more than collecting. That's exactly why high-quality 1929 mercury dimes are much harder to find today than many people realize. Collectors especially hunt examples with strong detail and original mint luster because so many surviving coins were heavily circulated during the economic crisis. Full bands examples are considered premium pieces and can sell for dramatically higher prices. Some rare high-grade examples have already reached impressive auction numbers, but many collectors believe the real growth hasn't even started yet. Think about what happens over time. Every year, more coins are damaged, lost, cleaned improperly, or locked away permanently inside private collections. If one day only a very small number of flawless 1929 mercury dimes remain available while worldwide collector demand keeps growing, values could rise into territory that sounds unbelievable today. That's the power of rarity mixed with American history. Do you think coins from historical events are more valuable?
Now let's move to the 1931 mercury dime. The 1931 mercury dime represents America during the darkest years of the Great Depression.
Jobs were disappearing, banks were failing, and millions of people struggled financially. These small silver dimes became incredibly important because even 10 cents had real buying power back then. People used them for meals, transportation, newspapers, and basic survival items. Because they circulated so heavily, many 1931 Mercury dimes surviving today are worn nearly flat. But here's where collectors get excited. High-grade 1931 dimes with beautiful surfaces are surprisingly scarce because hardly anyone saved them in excellent condition. Coins with sharp strikes and visible full bands are especially desired. The difference between an average example and a nearly perfect one can mean thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars in value. Experienced collectors know that condition rarity is often more important than simple mintage numbers. There's also something emotionally powerful about this coin. Holding a 1931 Mercury dime feels like holding a piece of survival history from one of the hardest economic periods America ever faced. That emotional connection increases collector demand because these aren't just coins, they are physical memories from another era. And imagine this possibility. If future generations continue becoming fascinated with historical silver coins while the supply of pristine 1931 dimes keeps shrinking, elite examples could eventually become millionaire-level collectibles at major auctions. What's the oldest coin you've ever found?
Now comes the 1936 Mercury dime. By 1936, America was slowly rebuilding after years of economic struggle. The Mercury dime had become one of the most recognized coins in the country, and millions circulated daily through restaurants, movie theaters, train stations, and stores. But despite large production numbers, finding a truly exceptional 1936 Mercury dime today is much more difficult than people think. Most were used constantly for decades, leaving heavy wear and damage on surviving examples. Collectors search carefully for coins with strong details in Liberty's hair and sharp bands on the reverse fasces. Full bands examples from 1936 are highly respected because the strike quality had to be nearly flawless. Coins with original luster and minimal marks can command serious prices at auction because they are becoming increasingly difficult to locate. One reason collectors love this date is because it represents a transitional period in American culture. The country was recovering, technology was advancing, and everyday life was beginning to modernize. Coins connected to important social eras often gain stronger popularity over time because they tell stories beyond their face value. Now picture the future. As silver coin collecting continues growing online, with younger generations discovering Mercury dimes through videos and auctions, competition for elite condition coins may become extreme. If the number of pristine 1936 examples drops low enough while demand rises globally, these coins could someday reach astonishing values that shock even experienced collectors. Would you spend an old silver coin or save it forever?
Now let's talk about the 1938 Mercury dime. This coin existed during a tense period just before World War II changed the world forever. America was still recovering economically, while global tensions were rising overseas. Millions of Mercury dimes circulated through everyday life, but very few people imagined collectors decades later would treat them like historical artifacts. The 1938 Mercury dime is especially interesting because many examples were poorly preserved, meaning high-grade survivors with strong details are becoming more difficult to locate every year. Collectors pay close attention to strike quality, surface preservation, and original luster on this date. Full bands examples again command huge premiums because sharp strikes were uncommon. Some top-condition examples have already sold for enormous prices compared to ordinary coins from the same era. What makes this coin exciting is its connection to history. This dime existed during the final peaceful years before America entered another global war. That historical backdrop gives the coin emotional weight and long-term collector appeal. Coins tied to major historical transitions often experience stronger demand as future generations look for tangible connections to the past. And here's the wild part. If only a tiny population of untouched 1938 Mercury dimes survives decades from now, while wealthy collectors continue competing for elite examples, it's completely possible that future auction prices become absolutely extraordinary. Which Mercury dime date do you think is the rarest?
Now, finally, the 1939 Mercury dime. The 1939 Mercury dime marks the final coin in this incredible group, and it carries a unique historical feeling because the world stood on the edge of massive change. Europe was entering war, tensions were rising globally, and America was preparing for uncertain times ahead. These silver dimes circulated through a nation that had no idea how dramatically history was about to shift. Most people spent them without thinking twice, which is why pristine examples today are much harder to find than casual collectors expect. High-grade 1939 Mercury dimes with beautiful luster and full bands details are heavily desired in the coin market. Many surviving examples show heavy wear or weak strikes, making truly exceptional coins stand out immediately. Auction houses have seen growing interest in premium Mercury dimes because collectors understand that supply can never increase again. Every year, fewer untouched examples remain. And this is what makes old coins so powerful. They are tiny pieces of frozen history. Each scratch, mark, and detail connects directly to real people from another era. That emotional connection is why collectors sometimes pay unbelievable prices for small pieces of silver that once bought almost nothing. Now imagine 20 or 30 years from today. If collector communities keep expanding.
So now I want to know, which of these Mercury dimes do you already own? Which rare coins should we cover next? And remember, we'll soon be uploading real treasure discoveries, rare coin finds, and hidden collectibles from across America. So make sure you subscribe and stay ready for the next piece of history. God bless America.